Well, Nebojša, welcome to Director's Notes.
Thank you.
So I'd just like to start by asking you to introduce yourself and the film we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, well, I'm Croatian, based in Zagreb. I was directing for a good part of my life. I was directing documentaries, and that was like my first film love were documentary films, and I did a couple of feature documentaries and a few shorts and plenty of TV work. And then 5 years ago, when COVID started, and roughly at the same time I became a father, I decided to start working with fiction, or to dedicate myself to fiction a little bit more. And then I directed two short fiction films. The second one is the one we are talking about, The Man Who Could Not Remain Silent, a 13-minute long film based on a real event that happened more than 30 years ago in Bosnia, during war in Bosnia. It was 1993, and it was a civilian train was stopped by Serbian paramilitary forces. They entered the train and started dragging out the passengers who had the Muslim surnames. And only one man out of 500 passengers stood up to them. And this is story about him, but also story about all the other people who did what large part of us would do in situation as that, who remained silent and just cared for their own life and didn't dare to stand up to the armed man.
Yeah. I was watching film yesterday and I was doing my research and, I learned a lot sort of about part of history that I didn't really know. And there's lots I want to dig into the film, but I used to live in the Dominican Republic for a while, and there was a dictator there who they want all the Haitians out of the country. So he used to get the army to ask people to pronounce perejil.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're Haitian, you can't pronounce it because
Okay.
it's in Spanish. So when I was watching the film and they were asking, "What's your patron saint?" It was sort of yeah, it's a haunting way of, sort of segregating people.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, actually, when I was researching the event for this for the script, I read more than 1,000 pages of court documents, of different of interviews with first-hand witnesses, and most of the dialogue in the film is taken from the real life. So the characters are, most of them are fictionalized, but everything that happens and the characters are inspired by real people. And this test that was done to find out who is Christian and who is a Muslim, the soldiers were really asking people who is their patron saint. This is one of the in the Orthodox Church, every family has a patron saint. So if you're Orthodox, then you know who your patron saint is, and on what date is you celebrate him. But if you're a Muslim, obviously you cannot know that, and that was the test. And they took out the people who didn't give the answer, and 19 people were taken out of the train that day, and all of them were killed on the same day. And for most of the victims, their bodies were never recovered.
Yeah. I found it sort of fascinating reading all about it. And so for you, all of that research that you undertook and, the first person testimony, how did that feed into the writing of the script?
Yeah, well, I felt a huge responsibility when I basically the same responsibility that I feel when I do documentaries. That although this is a fiction, I knew that people who were on the train, many of them are still alive. It was 30 years ago, so they will watch the film. And
Yeah.
people who lost their loved ones on that day will watch the film. And my first worry was not to first re-traumatize them, by presenting the events in a wrong way. And also, the first thing I did before even I started writing the script, I located the son of the main character of the film, Tomo Buzov, who died on the day as well. I located his son, Darko Buzov, and asked him for permission to make a film partially about his father, because I knew that the character of Tomo Buzov will be the only character that will be displayed under the real name. So Tomo Buzov character is a real. Tomo Buzov is a real person who died, who did something very heroic on the day, but he lost his life. So this responsibility, made me, do as much research as I could do, and then I also sent the script to some friends who are from Montenegro, where most of the victims were from, to read my script to see if it's respectful and is it truthful.
Yeah, I think that's so important, and that's a brilliant lesson as well from documentary making. So we're talking about people witnessing an event, and the camera is the witness to sort of what we're watching. And I know that I read that you filmed everything before on an iPhone before you went in. Why did you want to go into that extra preparation?
Yeah, well, to film, we knew that we will film on a real train, and it is really, really tiny space. It's really confined, so you don't have much space to move the camera, and you don't have much space even to use the film language. You're pretty much, you cannot, you can use only a couple of lenses that are all very, you can use a wide lens and little less wide lens. That's pretty much it. So for me, it was very important to try to find the visual dynamics of the film before starting to shoot, to use this very narrow set of tools that I could use in this space as good as possible. And also, actually, that's what I had the discipline from documentary film, that in a documentary film, it can happen to you very easily that you shoot a lot, much more than you need. And then you end up in the editing room trying to find out your film. You have like 100 hours of raw material, and you try to find one good hour in all this mess, And I hated that with documentary, and with documentary, I tried never to do it. I tried to, some of my documentaries, I was a cinematographer as well. So I had the discipline only to start camera when I'm like 50% certain that I will use this material, So to go to do as many decisions while filming as I can, not to leave any decisions to the editing room unless it's necessary, So I approached this film in a similar fashion. I wanted to know what I will shoot before I started filming as much as I could. So I did the sketch. I filmed the whole film with stand-ins who were members of production crew. Several times with cell phone. Then I have a small camera, a documentary camera that I used, and then we brought director of photography Gregor Božić into the project. So we came in a train with Ari Alexa, and we found out what lens we can use to fit all that in a tiny corridor, and can we use a dolly or not, So of course, when we started shooting, we gave ourselves some freedom, to experiment, but we actually knew what the film will be, and then we could experiment freely, without I could just try something else while shooting, and of course actors bring something unexpected to the set. So it's not like we did a film on autopilot, when we started shooting. But we knew like a good portion how it will look, and then the only inspiration came to us in the moment that we changed something.
And did anything sort of change on the day after all the rehearsals?
Yeah, well, of course, because I had fantastic actors, and what they brought to the set was subtlety, and because in a script we had more lines that is spoken in the film, and the script, when you read the script was a little louder than a film, with a little more raw than a film, with some, and when we started doing rehearsals, we just realized we don't need this, we don't have to say this line, because Goran Bogdan or Alexis Manenti are such great actors, that they can substitute some lines with silence, you know, and usually it gets stronger, you know. So, and then we don't need this soldier to push anybody, you know. That's so because it's stronger that way. So with actors, we toned down the whole film, and in my opinion, that make it scarier and more impressive.
Yeah, I think the silence is something that's very pervasive, and I have a whole question I want to ask you about sound later. And in the end, so the film is in a 4:3 ratio.
Yeah.
Why that decision?
Yeah, that was a very early decision. Even before I talked to Gregor, the DOP, it was like from my first director's note, you know, it was this decision. And it's actually very logical. First, you're in a train, you know, and if I had used the 16:9 or any wider aspect ratio, you know, that every shot would show all the faces in a compartment, you know. So, and I needed some space for editing, you know, to have separate close-ups. So yeah. We went narrow. But also, and for example, in a corridor, you know, if it would have the wide format, it wouldn't add anything, you know, just the walls of the corridor, you know. So we just cut it down, and that was first reason. Second reason, it fits to the atmosphere of the claustrophobia of the film, this narrow format. And the third reason is this film takes place in 1993, and most of the newsreels from the Bosnian War were shot on Betacam for television. That was in 4:3 format, you know. So it's like a visual language of the era. So it all made sense, you know, to do it in that way.
Yeah. And it's like you said, it's the claustrophobia, and when the camera's going around, it just feels like you're another person there watching what's going on. So the train car, it was there, it was ready for scrapping. So I want to know, because it's especially that final scene when you're just seeing all the people left behind. How did you shoot that with the stationary car?
Yeah, well, we got the train engine that we could use, and they let us to ride it for 50 meters. You know, that was part of a track that we got, because this train car that we were shooting in was not in how to say, it was in a horrible state, and they did not let us drive it on the open tracks because it would be dangerous, you know, for everybody. But they said you can park it on a part of the main station in Zagreb. This is the part where they wash the train cars, you know. We could use it, and it's around little more than 50 meters long, you know. And so they say you can move it on these tracks, you know, 50 meters so we had to really time it very carefully. And camera, you know, this last shot, camera is panning over the windows, you know, and you see through the windows, then the train is moving, and then the shot ends on the close-up of Goran Bogdan, and you don't see the window anymore. And actually, at that moment, when the pan is finished, you know, the train is already stopping in a real life, you know. But we just, with the sound effects, we created the illusion that the train is speeding up, you know. So we had to time it really carefully, movement of the train car and the movement of camera, so we don't disclose that the train stops after 30 or 40 or 50 meters.
Yeah, because 50 meters, it's not very long.
No, it's just, you know, you have a couple of seconds, you know, to pan over the windows. Yeah, so.
And sort of, I want to talk about that final shot. I think I watched it about 10 times in repeat. So, of course, we pan over, and then we see the guy's glasses and the newspaper and the empty seat. And then you've got the older gentleman, and then it goes round. And then you've got your incredible actor, Goran, his face. Was that done all in one take? Yeah. And I want to know about his reaction. How was it rehearsed? Or was it just natural?
Yeah, well, with Goran, he's a fantastic actor to work with. And actually, I spent hours with him, but not rehearsing, just talking, you know, talking about everything, about life, about politics, you know, about what's human, what's inhuman, about motivation, about ourselves, so and then we would just do the reading tests of the script, and we were just finding out what should happen where. But actually, I did not watch his performance until the day of the shooting.
Okay.
We didn't do like emotional rehearsal before the shooting. But both of us, we knew what has to happen, in front of the camera, but I did not know how it will happen. So I told him, where his character is. He knew exactly where his character is at this moment. And then I would just start the camera and start the train, and then we ended the shot on him, and then I would watch like I'm the audience in the cinema. What will he do, And he was so perfect every time. We did like 5 or 6 repetitions because of the other. It's very technical, but
yeah,
every time he's really fantastic. He's a great guy, and very emotional, and that's what makes a great actor.
Yeah. It's like you said, you could do all the filming you wanted beforehand, but with the actors there. And for me, it was all the movements in his mouth. You could just sort of see that trembling, and yeah, beautiful, painfully beautiful.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I wanted Goran he was my first and only choice, and
yeah, that was going to be my question.
I knew that the large part of the film will be on his close-up, and that he will need to break in a close-up without cutting away. I knew I won't cut away. I will just leave camera on his face, and we should see that he's breaking on the inside. And I think it's very, very difficult for the actor to do it. And I knew that he can do it perfectly because I've seen him doing similar stuff in other films. So
yeah.
I really hope that he will agree, because he's a big star in my country and in the whole area. Really, we have when he's on set, there is like people are coming to have selfies with him. But he's a great guy also. Very humble. Very, very nice person.
Yeah. And sort of when I was looking at other interviews and things, it's because you're not telling the film from the perspective of a hero, and he's very much sort of someone who you would imagine to be the hero. So I really like that switch as well. I want to talk about the sound. So you mentioned this earlier. So, I mean, I was struck by so many things. There's the silence, but you've got the soldiers, you've got the footsteps, you've got the teenagers' Walkman that you can hear. And it just all of it overlays, and it builds that tension and it builds that horror. So how was that all put together, and how did you know it was right?
Yeah, well, from writing the script, I knew that the sound will be important, and I think my script starts with the sound of the same as the film, with the sound of the train going through the tunnel, and this completely dark screen, and you just hear this repetitious sound of train. And I was thinking when writing, I was thinking as much about images, about sound as about images, because I also knew that the very important scene in the film will be a scene that I call the shadow play, when they're just close the curtains and they close the compartment and they try to ignore what's happening outside, and you just see the shadows of what's happening outside, but the sounds from the outside world, you cannot ignore them, and the young woman tries to ignore it by putting Walkman on her ears, but it's too loud, and even Walkman cannot block the shouts from the outside. So it was planned from the beginning, but also some of the decisions that we did in the editing was that we were not sure if we are going to use the music, I'm not but then when our sound editor Ivan Andreev from Bulgaria, when he presented us his first version, you know, we knew that we don't need the music. It's everything is there, you know, everything is very dry, very raw, you know, and again, less is more in this film, even with sound.
Yeah, and it's how you can imagine, you know, that sort of situation. You don't want to draw attention to yourself. You don't want to, you know, you don't want those things highlighted. And yeah, so for me, I think the worst bit it was those footsteps. That's what you think, like nothing's good is going to come of that.
Yeah, and on set, when we were filming parts of this film, when they wait for soldiers to come to their compartment, I was the one who was making loud sounds in the corridor to get actors to react, you know, and I was trying to trick them in a way, you know, just to be very silent, and then I would start loudly banging on the wall of the train, which was not very smart because it was so old that I think once I punched the wall with my fist, you know, because it was like falling apart literally. The train car was really. Yeah, but some of the sounds you can hear in a film, you know, that I was making on the set.
Okay,
like footsteps. Yeah, some of the footsteps are mine.
And so Oscar nomination. Congratulations, first of all. And I know you've done really well with the film, but I obviously wanted to speak to you. And again, I've sort of heard you talking in interviews. It's about the universality of the story and what's going on at the moment. And so even though you're telling this, you know, one little bit of history, it's what it speaks to.
Yeah. It is film that happens 30 years ago. But for me, from the very beginning, it was not film only about that. It was film about something very universal, something that I can identify with, and I think a lot of people can identify with. And because the situation we are presenting is something that many of us witnessed similar situations, not that extreme, of course, you know, not that extreme, but in my life, I had a situation that happened a couple of years ago when we had, I was on a bus going through Europe, you know, and it was, I think, 10 years ago when there was a big wave of refugees from Syria coming to Europe, and some of them were undocumented immigrants. And then German police stopped our bus. It was night, and we were stopped somewhere on a highway. They entered the bus and they started asking for IDs, only men. And then they took out only the men with a darker skin. And some of these men did not come back to the bus. You know, they were kept by police. And our bus just went on, and none of us asked what just happened, you know, because we just... So, of course, this is not the same situation, not even similar situation, because in my film I'm talking about genocide, you know, but these are the situations, you know, but something happened to these people. Maybe they were arrested, maybe they were deported. Nothing nice happened to them, for sure. So yeah, and then I started thinking, you know, what I would do if I was on the train. Would I be similarly, you know, uninterested what happens to my to the person who was sitting next to me, you know, or would I do something, you know? And also we can look at this situation also on a global level. You know, when there is a war happening, like a couple of countries away from us, you know, does it considers us or not? You know?
Yeah, no, I mean we're living in an age. There's war, there's genocide still going on a daily basis, and I just think, yeah, history does repeat itself. You know, I think we know that.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely, unfortunately. During your festival run, you know, how have you found reactions? Has it sparked any conversations that you weren't expecting?
Well, reactions were fantastic, mostly. For me, very touching was the reaction of Belgrade audience, because I'm Croat from Croatia, and I was making film that shows a war crime committed by Serbian paramilitary forces, which is like politically very touching, because we in this area we saw in last decades many films that were made for me for political reasons which are not good, you know, for to reason only to films that were more of a propaganda film, you know. And when you read the synopsis of my film, and if you're from Serbia, you could think that here it is, a Croat is making anti-Serbian propaganda film, you know. Of course, it is not what my film is not propaganda and not anti-Serbian, you know, but still, I was waiting to see how Belgrade audience will accept the film. And this screening, film was screened in Belgrade in front of 3,000 people. Can you imagine that? It was huge. It was opening of a film festival, so 3,000 people came to the opening. You know, they screened my film and they screened Anora that just won Cannes. You know, so it was like a double bill. And the family of Tomo Buzov was on the screening, and it was fantastic. You know, the audience was very emotional. They completely understood the film, and they reacted very warmly. And Tomo Buzov's family also, you know, was touched by the film. So for me, it was the most important screening of all the screenings that I was on.
Yeah. Yeah, that must be incredibly emotional. And I know some filmmakers don't like to watch their film when it's playing. You know, other filmmakers like to be in there and sort of hide themselves. There's all kind of different approaches.
No, I have no problem with watching my films, you know, because I learned through that as well, because you watch it differently when you're with people. You know, you see some things that you did not notice before, and you feel how people react to some stuff, and you think, okay, maybe I could have done this better. Oh, this worked better than I expected. So for me, it's very, very, you know, important to watch film with the audience.
Yeah. And what about you as a filmmaker? Are you going to continue with fiction now?
Yeah, I think so. That does not mean that that I will leave documentary behind. But now I'm preparing my first feature fiction. That is, I write it now, and I hope to get it on to production in the next 2 years. So we now have a strong wind in our backs, because the same production company and the same production team will work on this film as well. So we had a great experience working together. So we want some more of that. So
yeah,
we'll see.
Absolutely. Ride the wave.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. This has been beautiful.
Thank you, Sarah, for very nice conversation, for very good questions. So it was a
Thank
pleasure.
you. Thank you. No, it was my pleasure as well. And it was, you know, you mentioned earlier, what would you do? And I had that same conversation because I watched the film a couple of days ago, and I sort of watched again, and then just last night with my partner. And I still don't know. I still don't have an answer.
I don't think anyone knows before we found ourselves in situations like that. So it's
No. Yeah.
yeah. I
It's
hope that
something
we
I
don't have
think
to.
about.
I hope we don't have to to find out what we will do. You know, that's what.
No, absolutely. But it's just it's just interesting to have those questions in the back of your head.
But also something very important for me, you know, it's not about one person doing something. You know? And in this film, when people ask me, what would I do? I say, I don't know, but I think the only solution is that all 6 people react, not one, you know, not alone, because lone hero cannot do anything, you know. Only in Marvel films, lone heroes can save the world. In real life, lone heroes lose their lives, and the world is the same, you know. So yeah, that's, I think, the only solution. Not to have heroes, but to have like people, yeah, come together.
Many heroes.
Yeah.